Wherever you are in the world or wherever you are on your journey, welcome to the Recovery Journey podcast with Horizon Behavioral Health, where we know recovery is possible and every day is a second chance. Are you struggling with substance use addiction or worried about a friend or a loved one? You're not alone in this fight. We're here with some special guests joining us from their unique place of recovery or a supportive role in helping others on their recovery journey. Hey everybody, so we're here today to talk a little bit about substance use prevention, and I know our listeners have been sticking with us for 6 episodes now, and I hope you are ready to switch it up. We're going to talk a little bit about the prevention side of things today. We've been focusing a lot of our conversation around treatment and recovery, but if we know anything, we know that when we are having conversations about substance use treatment, substance use recovery, we also want to be having conversations about substance use prevention as well, because they are all so interrelated. And we're talking about building healthy communities. Prevention has got to be a part of that conversation. And here to join me in that conversation, I have with me Januwaa Davis, Prevention Program Manager at Horizon Behavioral Health. Hey, Jan.
Hey, Gabriella. Thank you for having me here today.
We're so glad you could be here. I also have at the table DJ Best.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Glad to have you, DJ. And I also have Officer Travis Thomas with the Bedford Police Department.
Top of the evening.
So I know all of our listeners are thinking, what in the world do all these folks have in common? But the truth is, I think y'all have been working hand in hand now for quite a few years here serving the greater Lynchburg community. And so we're just going to talk about some of the ways in which you are all tackling substance use prevention in your space. I know all three of you at the table do a lot of work with educating our youth around substance use prevention. And I also know that our prevention team has recently just got back from a conference called YADAP, the Youth Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Project. She was just at with quite a few kids from our local high school. Is that right, Jan?
Yeah, we had a great time last week. We had the opportunity to attend the Youth Alcohol Drug Abuse Prevention Project conference sponsored by Virginia ABC down at Christopher Newport University in Newport News. It was an amazing experience. We were able to take 4 high school youth from our community down to this conference, where they had an opportunity to be with over 100 like-minded young people from all across the state, looking at what is really impacting our young people as it relates to tobacco, alcohol, and substance use, and what is it that they can do? How can they use their voices to make a difference in that and to have a positive impact on their peers?
That's amazing. So what are the kids bringing home from this conference?
Yeah, it was an amazing week. We went from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10:30 at night.
Did you mean to say exhausting?
It was exhausting. But on the way home, just hearing, we had a 3.5 hour drive home, and just hearing the youth reflect on the time that they had there, all of the wonderful speakers that poured into their lives and the things that they were able to take from what those speakers had to say to them was so impactful. Likewise, they developed what we call a STAND plan, which is a strategies to act now plan, where they've identified what they believe to be the most what substances impacted their peers the most, and came up with a plan on how to address that, which I've been working in this field a long time, and to see these young people be empowered to come alongside all of us adults who do this as a part of our professional lives, and to have the knowledge and the expertise to be able to carry something out. And so they developed a plan where they are going to be implementing a program called Protect Your Game. They're going to be partnering with Central Virginia Addiction and Recovery Resources and Horizon Behavioral Health in partnership with Lynchburg City Schools to implement this program called Protect Your Game that focuses on athletes. And so they are going to be teaching athletes what the impact of substance use, particularly vaping and the other drugs, but what impact substance use could have on athletic performance. And so they are excited. They have thought about what their plan is, who they could partner with. They've thought about how do they evaluate this program? How do they sustain it for many, many years to come? They spent a whole week thinking about the program and in their plan and developing it. And so we're really excited. We're planning to get back together next Friday to go ahead and put our plan into action. So it was an amazing week.
Wonderful. I can't wait to hear more about what the kids have in store for us in the community and their peers.
Yes.
That's so wonderful. So it's great to know that there's these opportunities out there that are giving our youth a chance to be empowered and, put their brains to work and in a really positive way to kind of help their peers in the community. Our youth are in a really critical time of life in their high school years. And so, how do we empower our kids in that age range? I know I've got two coaches here on the call and somebody that's working with our high schoolers here in the community. How do we empower our kids to make the right decision? And then how do we empower them to stand up and talk about things with their peers, with their parents if they don't know what to do, their teachers? What does that look like to a kid right now?
I think why it's critically important is that sometimes social norms say that everybody's doing something. And we get this perception, our young people get this perception that everybody's vaping or everybody's smoking marijuana or everybody's drinking. And the truth is, that's not true at all. A very small percent of folks are doing that. And the risk that we run when kids think that everybody's doing something, then that means that maybe they should do it too. And so it's so important that young people use their voice and they feel proud to say, no, I'm not doing that. And the more young people that say, no, I'm not doing that, and this is why, the better we are as a society, the more impact we can have on our young people as it relates to substance use. So it's so important that young people use their voice to share why they are not using substances. And we could say it all day long, like us in this room could preach to kids all day long and they do not want to hear from us. They don't care what we have to say because truly they think we can't relate to them, right? We graduated from high school back in the Stone Ages. Like we have no idea what it is they're going through, even though that may not be true at all. But when they hear from their peers, that is so much more impactful. And so that's why it's so important that young people are using their voices in that way.
So what I'm hearing is if there's somebody on this call today that's sitting here thinking, I've got a leader at home, that's what they can do. They can encourage their kids to be influences on their peers. And especially in this area, how important it is. DJ, I know you're working with some of the kids here on the athletic side of things, right? I'm sure you've had one or two conversations regarding substance use prevention and maybe even how that sometimes links to mental health, right? We know that often those things go hand in hand. So what are some of those conversations like?
So one of my things is I'm 100% transparent. That is my coaching method, is to let them know who I am as an individual. So they come into my house, they meet my kids, my family, and we grow together that way. Because I think a form of trust is built when people really know each other. And then that way they can break down all the stones. But one of my things is to let them know I've been there. I know what the influence is like. I listen to the music that they're listening to right now, which to Miss Jan's point, that's what they hear, is they hear everybody else doing it, not understanding exactly what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But also telling them and asking them, if you are doing it, I'm not calling you out as an individual. I'm just saying as just a rhetorical statement. If you are doing it, I say, can you stop long enough to see if it changes your life? And so a lot of them will ask that question of, what does that mean? Well, as a coach, your basketball season runs from November to March. If you can't stop for that long, you won't stop. You're no good to me as a player. You're no good to me as an athlete. You're no good to your teammates as a teammate. But the other thing that we do is we pull older players who have been through the system, who understand what we're asking, and tell their truths. I used to be on it, not me. They would come in and rephrase their story of, I used to do this, I used to do that. Coach DJ asked me to stop for a short period of time. Now I haven't picked it back up. Now I haven't done those things. So to Ms. Jan's point, utilizing a peer who they would look up to, who's been through it, who they understand, who they would speak to in the community, and then taking that person and allowing them their own point of view of, hey, this can change my life by just simply putting it down. Starts with one day. It's going to take some time, and it depends on how deep they are. But I think once the kids realize that you're in the trenches with them and you're not just picking on them or calling them out, they're more willing to understand. Um, and basketball is a weird sport because you need your lungs, and if you're vaping or you're smoking marijuana, those types of things impact your ability to perform at a high level. I know that there's some studies out there that people will say differently. But at the end of the day, at the high school level, this is preventing you from being able to play to your standard. So we use the peers as much as we can, but we build a lot of transparency within the program so that the kids understand what's going on and how it affects their body in ways that they can perform better.
I really appreciate you sharing how important the education side of it is. As as important as it is to build those relationships where you can have open and transparent conversations like you're saying, it's also so important for our kids to know the facts,
Yeah.
right? I know recently our Hype Coalition, Jan can tell us a little bit more about the kids that are leading that effort amongst their peers in the high schools. They recently launched a campaign where they decided that they were going to address the link between mental health and how oftentimes they use substances to cope with stressors that they're feeling either at home or in sports or at school. And so, those things we know are linked oftentimes. And so I'd love for Jan to share a little bit more about that campaign that they recently did and how did that come about?
Yeah, so each year our Hype Club, again, which is made up of high school students, identify what is the thing that's causing the most concern as it relates to substance use. And traditionally, we've always landed on a particular substance. Last year, our kids were so intuitive. And this is why I love working with young people because I come in thinking I have all the information and I learn so much from them. If we just sit and we're willing to listen, we can learn so much from them. And the more they talked about it, they just said, yeah, really, really the reason why so many of our peers are vaping or using substances is that it's connected to their mental health. And we don't want to focus on a substance this year. We want to focus on youth mental health. And we don't want our target audience to be youth. We want our target audience to be adults. And how do the adults support the mental wellness of the youth in their lives? And so those young people, they created an awareness campaign that consisted of a television commercial that was playing on our local television networks. It also consisted of social media ads on Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and all the places. In addition, we had yard signs at each of the schools so that when parents and teachers and other caring adults were visiting those spaces, it gave them some tools and ideas on how to support youth mental wellness. One of the things that I laugh about is, and I know this happens all the time, but the young people were telling us that when they go to talk about their mental health, oftentimes they get shut down by the adults in their lives. Either the adults don't want to talk about it, or they minimize their experiences, or they just say like, "Oh, that ain't nothing. Wait till you get my age," or "I know what you're going through when I was," and they make it about them. And so they really wanted adults to really step back and understand how young people are struggling with their mental health, even more so than in years past. We know that today, according to recent research, that 1 in 5 high school students is struggling with their mental health. That means if you put 25 kids in a classroom, 5 of them are having significant challenges with their mental health. And so that was alarming. For me, I knew the research, but then to hear the kids explain what that looks like, because research, quantitative data is one thing, but when you have the qualitative
It's
information and personal stories and things to go with it, it just makes it so much more impactful. And so they did that. They held some parent focus groups with parents at different events, and parents were blown away by what these young people had to share. So in my takeaway is listen to the voice of youth. Listen to their voice. They have so much to tell us as adults, and they have so much to tell their peers if we just take the time to listen to them, and we inspire them and encourage them to do that, to share what they have within them.
It's amazing. It's amazing to hear what they can come up with a little bit of support, right? And a listening ear. That campaign, I think, really rocked the socks off of a lot of people in our community because it was so honest and it was open and it was raw. And I think if half the people that saw those ads knew that they were coming from kids in our community, they would have been blown away.
Yeah.
So just amazing. Big shout out to our Hype Club kids for all their hard work on that project. So along the same lines, as we're thinking about how concerning it is that we have youth that are telling us in the classroom and within their own peer groups that oftentimes substances seems like the easiest way to cope with some of those stressors in their lives because they're not aware of any other route that's available to them. Maybe they are there, maybe they're just not comfortable to take advantage of them. So DJ, I think I heard you you were telling me a little bit about some of the things that you do with your athletes to kind of help them take a break and take a rest and handle some of those stressors in a more positive way. What are some of the things you'd recommend?
So I've learned a lot as a coach this is year 6. My mother-in-law has been a staple of mental health and those types of things and prevention and what to look for and those types of signs. And so we do what is just called, I don't want to use the word lash out Thursdays or anything like that, but we always have just a sit down. We have a sit down before every single practice. Get it off your chest, because what we want to do is we don't want outside world affecting once we hit 94 feet. And so a lot of them in the beginning part, when we started to implement it, would laugh. They didn't have anything to talk about, but then they would pull me to the side. Hey, coach, do you got a second? I'm struggling with this, or I need help talking about this. All right, let's talk about it. And to Jan's point, one of the things is when I was a young coach, I caught myself doing it. Like, man, this is what you worried about? Like, this is your worry?
This ain't none.
And I'm thinking like, man, I got to go home. I got to make sure my family eat. I got kids to make sure they get to school. I got gas to get in the car. But at 13, 14, 15, 16, it's a lot of pressure out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that my mother-in-law taught me was to take a step back, and to Ms. Jan's point is put myself in their shoes, because yes, I've lived where they've lived, and now I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't have anybody that they can come to, they never get it out there. And so they continue to go to these coping mechanisms that then they turn into drugs. They turn into, lashing out. They turn into abuse and those types of things that you're looking for that you don't pay attention to because you never gave the kid the time of day. So every day before practice, we sit down, we go 30 minutes. We usually will put on film and let things go back. And then throughout the day, you'll see someone just send a message. That's it. Cool. Hey, coach, can I go to the bathroom? That's the cue. You got to go to the bathroom. That means we need to have a conversation. So it allows them the free space to open up to their coaching staff. But also now we're getting to the point where they understand that if you look at our things online, it always says family. But the L is the number 1, because we're one family. So now the kids open up to their peers as well. So now they say, well, I can't get a hold of Coach DJ. Let me reach out to such and such on the team. So now they can understand that they can relate and talk to someone else that's on their staff or on their team and be able to get that off of their chest. And then they have someone to share with. Not that kid is going to have the answers, but sometimes kids just need to vent, let it out, put it out in the space, then decompress and come back to it the very next day. And then at least that's hey, coach, I called you earlier, but I talked to such and such, and they were able to kind of calm me down a little bit. But can I get some of your time tomorrow? So one of those, that's been our biggest thing, is opening up the communication piece, allowing them to know that we've been there for them. We are there for them. And it is a safe space. The parent in me hopes that someone out there turns to my kids and is that coach where, let's just face it, where as a person who has parents, I didn't tell my parents everything.
Yeah.
But there are some senses where I would tell a coach or another adult a lot more things that I didn't tell my parents because I trusted that person. I want my kids to have someone like that. And I'm thrilled to put 14 different lives at hand every single year where they feel like they can trust Coach DJ to come to him and tell him their biggest fears. And at the same time, keep it a safe spot. I don't run to mom and dad unless it's an absolute emergency. But I don't run to mom and dad. We sit down, we talk through it, because at the end of the day, these young men are going to be young adults, and let's try to figure out how to problem solve without the negative coping mechanisms that they've been going through. Um, and that's really been the big piece.
I love that you share that example of how you kind of have this cue with your kids so that they, they have this out where they can quietly and anonymously kind of step back, but it's a way for them to tell you that something's going on without having to make it public to the rest of their peers. So it just sounds like such an intuitive tactic, something that we can set in place beforehand, before there's ever an issue, whether you're a parent, a coach, an adult that cares for a young person in your life, or an adult that cares for another adult. I mean, we're talking about kids right here in the conversation, but we know that oftentimes, these strategies, they're universal, and we can use them as we're working with adults and trying to support each other.
Our safety word has been a big help. And all the other coaches out there know how hard that we push our kids. And if that kid is having a bad day, it's just like the Chick-fil-A commercial. You never know what someone else is going through. And so we use those safety words so that way your teammates know you're having a rough day without picking on you. Because if not, we're going to push you beyond your limits, because that's what it takes to be a great competitor, is to get past some of those uncomfort spots so you can get used to being uncomfortable. But if it's just not your day, we all have that safety word. Once it's used, everybody's like, all right, let's back off. Let's just be there for them. Hey, you need a minute? Yep. Okay, cool. Go get you one. But it all puts us all in the same boat at the same time. So no one is like, well, what's going on? Why are we not ripping him a new one? When really they're going through something, and now everybody understands.
And Ms. Gabriella, I think the key thing about both of their platforms is that we mentioned adults, right? So you have parents who you have kids that have adults. They have great guardians in their life and things of that nature. But then your athletes are usually the most popular kids at school for the most part. So you get that. But the people that fall between the cracks are people who don't have parents to advocate for them. Right. So growing up, my mother was on drugs. I didn't have a parent to advocate for him, but it's important to educate other parents so that they can see that child who it might be very close with their friend, right? Mm-hmm. That could be like, hey, when you eat, he gonna eat, things of that nature, because that's mental health. Like we talk about mental health that leads to drugs, but what we make, like DJ said, we have no idea what these kids are thinking about. And these are kids. Some of the kids go to homes with parents have a lot of money. It's not necessarily finances, but they may not have the right amount of love,
the time,
or they may not.
Emotional
mom and dad may not have came to the game or whatever. So you do that, and then when you build leadership inside your program. So with these athletes, man, it's a gift to be able to coach kids and know that you will be able to have an impact. Because if I have an impact on the players that I coach, they're going to have an impact everywhere that they go. And they go places that I won't be. Why I try to be, it's crazy because what I've learned with fathering, my oldest is in 11th grade. Juice may not come to me and talk to me about everything, right? Matter of fact, other kids probably come to me and tell me stuff about what he's going through. But I try to create that atmosphere where my kids can come to me, but everybody don't have that. So if I can empower my athletes to make sure that they're trying to encourage their friends to do the right thing, I feel like that that's exactly what we need in the community.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Officer Travis, because when we're talking about mental health and we're talking about substance use and addiction, we know that anybody and everybody can be affected. And I know everybody's shaking their heads at the table. Jan, this is something we really try to remind our community, right? That nobody is immune from being affected by these things. There are illnesses that are in our community, and we have a responsibility to be able to respond.
I'm sorry.
No, sure. Absolutely. So when we think about substance use and mental illness, no one is exempt from that. So whether you have money, you have lots of money or no money at all, I'm kind of in the middle, but whether you have money or no money at all, or whether you're so rich or poor, black or white, whether you live in a rural community or in the middle of the city, it really doesn't matter. Any of us can be impacted by substance use. And so that's why substance use and or mental illness. And so that's why it's so important to remove the stigma as it relates to these things, because it can impact any and all of us. I guarantee that every single one of our listeners today knows someone or loves someone who's impacted by substance use and or mental illness. And with that, as we can continue to talk about youth and young people, one of the beauties, I think, of athletes in particular is athletes oftentimes are the people that other students look up to. And so one of the things that we know is that about 60% of all high school students are involved in some type of athletic program. And so they have the ability to have such a major impact on their peers. And so when we think about coaches and the role that coaches play, if coaches are able to see this as bigger than the game and understanding that the young person that they have in front of them is a leader in their own right, whether they recognize it and they're using it for good or using it for bad, if the coach is able to empower the young person to use their position for good, we can impact a whole generation of young people. And so we're super excited at Horizon Behavioral Health and the CVARR Coalition to launch the Protect Your Game program this fall with Lynchburg City Schools. And so we're definitely looking forward to that.
Jan, I'm so glad you brought up the Central Virginia Addiction and Recovery Resources Coalition, because this group is doing a lot of powerful things here in the Central Virginia community. And as we're talking about how do we support our young people and creating conversations and changing norms, I think our community coalitions and folks that are volunteering their time to make changes when we're talking about substance use prevention, CVARR is top of the mind for me when I think about conversations being had, at least here in our community. So we do have Teegan Deuso here. She is the coalition coordinator for CVARR. Thanks for being here, Teegan.
Thanks, Gabriella. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I am privileged to be the coalition coordinator for CVARR here in the Central Virginia region. I'm happy to say that we have over 80 active members right now, and we're representing over 40 partnerships in the community. So we're really working hard to address the prevention, treatment, and recovery needs of the community. And we have a lot of focus on youth. For sure, we're so excited to partner with Lynchburg City Schools and Horizon to implement Protect Your Game in the fall, and to work with the Hype Club. It's so exciting, and I think it's really going to have a really big impact on our students.
Amazing. And could you just tell me a little bit more about CVARR and, what's the goal? What are you guys trying to accomplish here in the community?
Yeah, so the mission of CVARR is to protect our community from the devastating impacts of substance use through collaborative problem solving and grassroots efforts. And we have a mission or a vision to have a safe and healthy community for all. So we want to really protect our students and our youth and all of our community members from the impacts that substance use has on our community. We know, like Jan said, no one is exempt from these impacts. We've done a lot in this past year around trying to address some of these things. We're celebrating coming up soon our 5-year anniversary. Wow. And so we're so excited about that. And like I said, Protect Your Game, a huge project coming up soon. We're really excited to be working with law enforcement to have Hidden in Plain Sight. And so that program really focuses on educating parents, educating caregivers about signs and symptoms of substance use in young people and what to look for, even in their rooms, in their lives, things that would indicate that they might be thinking about using substances or struggling with their mental health. So we are always looking for new members. There's really a place for everybody at CVAR. There's always time and space to lean in to see what's going on in the community. And so, whatever you're interested in, as far as helping folks, as far as getting involved, we would love to have you there and see how you can get your feet in and lean into people's lives.
That's so wonderful and amazing to hear how many groups and partnerships and individuals are coming in to support that vision for our community. It's really, really powerful. So, I would love to talk a little bit more about this hidden in plain sight training that we offer to the community. And I want to jump back to earlier this year when, I think some of our young people in our communities were just tragically impacted by substances that have been circling in our community. And yes, everybody that's listening, I am talking about fentanyl. How do we have this conversation and not talk about fentanyl, right? Can you guys tell me a little bit more about the dangers that we're seeing in regards to fentanyl? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about how hidden in plain sight is an opportunity for parents to be enlightened even further about some of those harms, and then actually have a way to go forth and have conversations around these tough topics with their kids.
Yeah, so most recently we've learned that 7 out of 10 drugs that have been seized by the DEA have lethal doses of fentanyl in them. So that means that out of all those substances that are circulating around our communities, there's that 7 out of 10% chance that that substance could have fentanyl in it, and it is deadly. We've also learned that fentanyl is in many, many different types of substances. So traditionally, we've thought that it was mainly in another opioid or a painkiller. But now it's in Zoloft, it's in marijuana, it's in anything, even through cross-contamination, right? So we really, really want to inform the community about naloxone as well. So knowing how to reverse any opioid overdose, that also works on fentanyl. So Narcan will work on fentanyl as well. And so we really encourage anyone who's listening to know how to respond in the case of an emergency. The Virginia Department of Health and Horizon offer Revive trainings. And those are virtual, those are free, and you can get free naloxone following that training. So that is a powerful, powerful tool that we have to save lives in our community.
Amazing. And to some of our listeners who may not be familiar with the term naloxone, we also know that that's commonly referred to as Narcan. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. We use those two words interchangeably, but Narcan is the brand name. Naloxone is the drug itself.
Thank you for clarifying that. And to our listeners who may be listening outside of Central Virginia, they can access naloxone through other means. Is that correct?
Yeah. So all the Virginia health departments should have naloxone, and also community service boards. We just really encourage folks to get a hold of those places before showing up to pick them up, because we want to make sure they have some available and on hand and everything. But they are free to get. So no cost to pick those up and to have those on you. And we encourage you also to have that Narcan on you at all times. Can never know when it might be needed, unfortunately.
Officer Travis, as we talk a little bit more about our Hidden in Plain Sight program, I know so grateful to have partnered with you all at the Bedford Police Department. So Officer Thomas, you have been able to be a part of the Hidden in Plain Sight workshop for quite a few years now, as we've been partnering together to provide that here in our community. As an officer who's seeing a lot of things out there in the community, maybe some things that those in the call, those that are listening, haven't really experienced. How important is it that we're, offering these Hidden in Plain Sight workshops where folks can have a physical example of things to look for in a child's bedroom that may be indicative of problematic behaviors?
It's vital. It's very important. The town of Bedford Police Department has been partnering with you guys in this workshop. I fortunately was just able to partner with you guys this year in February, I believe, with Miss Jan. We did one at a church here locally, and it's vital because I probably learned more information in there than I did on the streets. I mean, you get it from the Narcan standpoint because that's been vital and it has saved lives. when you run to calls. And so, from a children's standpoint, some parents think, well, I don't need it, and I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, vice
Absolutely.
versa, especially with as you mentioned, it's being mixed with so many different things. So another thing I do is I take a lot of our narcotics to the lab, so we get some of those results where somebody might have thought that they just had weed and then it happened to have it in there. So that's been very important. But the Hidden in Plain Sight is an amazing workshop because you're learning so much about what kids could possibly hide drugs in. You're learning about like secret lock boxes, is that's what it's called, Miss Jan, where like it may look like a clock to you, but you can
Mm.
unscrew the bottom and it's like a
Mhm.
hidden location. You also learn about things that you may think that's common. So they have a screen where it's like lifesaver gummies and another gummy that's an edible, and you may think that you can tell the difference, but you really can't. But it also informs parents on things of that nature. So, because gummies and things aren't regulated, right? So, some kids may think that it's okay to take a gummy because such and such took it, but there isn't a certain measurement of what's in one gummy that might be in the next. So this year in Bedford, we've had children overdose on it in schools because they're taking the gummies and not understanding that with it not being regulated and not being a certain measurement in it, that it could be very deadly. So I love the Hidden in Plain Sight. I have so many people ask about it, and I'm able to go to my PowerPoints and my just my sharing points, my speaking points, to be able to share with parents and a lot of the churches in the community about that important information.
It's so nice to hear that you guys are coming alongside churches in our community to have these conversations. How important is it that our different community groups are getting involved and we're having these conversations about substance use prevention?
Yeah, when you think about substance use prevention, no one organization or one individual can do this work alone. It's all of our responsibility. And so whether it's the media or law enforcement or the medical community or schools or organizations like Horizon or our local churches, we all have a role to play and meet people where they are, get people the information that they need to protect themselves, but then also build those relationships so that when someone is struggling, they have someone that they can turn to. It's all of our job to reduce the stigma as it relates to substance use and mental illness so that people can get the help that they so desperately need.
Thinking about some of the other ways that, our organization has been blessed to come hand in hand with law enforcement. I know something that we regularly do every year, twice a year, is Drug Take Back Day, which we know is coming up in October.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, coming up in October. And this is something we do twice a year together. Is that correct, Travis?
Yes, ma'am. In the past, it's been done usually in April and October, and it's just an opportunity to just bring out medicine that you had in the cabinet that you no longer need. And we also have different things out there from Horizon where like they have it just helps you destroy like 45 pills, basically.
Jan and Teegan, help us out. What is he talking about here?
The medication disposal bags.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So you
Another free resource?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I carry them around with me. I get them from Horizon because when I go to elderly facilities or when I go to do different presentations, a lot of people need something like that. So it's just basically a bag where you can destroy up to 45 pills, I believe, or something like that. Add water to it, shake it. So you got that. But it's just a way for us to, number one, get out in the community, but then number two, let you know that like this is a way for you to be able to destroy anything if you would like to.
So jot it down, folks, DEA.gov, and you can find locations all across the country, not just here in Central Virginia, where your law enforcement partners are coming alongside your community to help folks dispose of unwanted and excess medications. So important. Jan and Teegan, you all are working in the professional space as far as prevention is concerned. Why is disposal of unwanted or expired medications so important?
I feel that it's really important, one, that we just safeguard our community when it comes to this entire epidemic. for many years we were hearing that we had an opioid epidemic, but the truth is we just have a drug epidemic, and it's up to all of us to safeguard our community. And what that means is just knowing how to safely store and dispose of medication. And so if we're talking about storage, making sure the medications are no longer held in our medicine cabinets. Many of us grew up in an age where our medicines was in the medicine cabinets in the bathrooms.
Unlocked,
but
right?
Unlocked, right.
Mhm.
But we've gotten so far, we should have gotten so far away from that because we know that it's easy access. And so limiting access, as responsible adults, we need to know how much medication we have on hand,
Mhm.
where it's at, making sure that anyone who is intended to use it for reasons that it wasn't prescribed for don't have the ability to get their hands on it. So storage is important, but also disposal is important. So we're encouraging everyone to dispose of unused and unwanted medications and not just hold on to them. I know growing up, we had just tons and tons of medicine. Some of it was expired. Some of it was stuff that we had got and we had no intention of using. But we're at this point just telling people once it's no longer needed, expired, unwanted, to just go ahead and get rid of it. And you can do that by coming to Drug Take Back Day in April and October of every year. But also many of our local pharmacies, as well as our law enforcement partners, have places where you can get rid of medications any day of the year. And so Horizon has been very fortunate to partner with our law enforcement partners from across the region in some of these efforts to include Drug Take Back Day, but also making sure that some of our law enforcement partners have a medication disposal spot right in their facility. And so we definitely could not do this work without Officer Travis and some of the other partners that we have around here. And so it's been so impactful to have them.
And to those that are listening that may be residents of Central Virginia, what kind of resources are available to them to dispose or to keep their medications safe if they do need to keep them on hand?
We do have medication lock boxes that we have available at Horizon. And when I know CVARR and Horizon partner for tabling events at local community events, we have those medication lock boxes available on the tables. So if you are at a community event and you see a Horizon or a CVARR tent, come see us. And we do have those resources available there. We also usually have those disposal bags that Officer Travis brought up. And we'd love to see you and connect with you and maybe get you connected with CVARR.
You can also just reach out to Horizon Behavioral Health at 434-477-5000 if you're interested in a medication, this lockbox right here in the Central Virginia community. But if you're anywhere in the state of Virginia, just reach out to your local community service board to access one of those medication lockboxes. They're free of charge. So if you need that because you have a medication that you're concerned about, that someone may be trying to get their hands on or could cause risk to your family or loved ones, please reach out to us to get one of those medication lock boxes.
I know the medication lock boxes just came in handy twice. I was doing a elderly PACE meeting and I was able to meet you guys to get one. But also I was working a case where a lady, that's the importance of making sure you lock up your narcotics. Someone who was watching her knew, I believe she had like some type of cancer where it was like where she needed like strong pain medicine and they took everything from her. So like the importance of making sure that you have that locked up is very good. Also our Bedford County Sheriff's Department, you can go there any day throughout the week to drop off medication. You can do that Monday through Friday, but we do it every April and October.
Amazing. Well, thank you all three of you, four of you that are here on this call and pouring into our community in so many different ways. I'm so glad that we could sit down today and talk about the power of prevention when we're thinking about how we move the needle when it comes to substance use here in our community. So thank you all for the amazing work that you're doing in your different spaces. And I hope that our listeners who have tuned into today's episode, that we won't let the discussion end here. So go home, have these conversations with your friends, your families, and in your communities. You now know that these resources are free and available to you. These trainings and all of this education is right at your fingertips. So please reach out to Horizon and take advantage of these things that are here. We are here to support you, and we care for our community, and we just want to come alongside you so that we can beat this epidemic that we're up against. And we know that together we can do that. So as you do these things and as you go from this podcast today, please don't forget about the things we've talked about and share them with everybody you know. And for now, we will be here celebrating every single individual out there that is saying no to substances because they want to be a model for those that are coming behind them and those that are walking alongside them. I'd like to thank each of you on behalf of Horizon and our listeners for being a part of today's discussion and being willing to have these conversations in hopes that someone listening can benefit from what you all are seeing out there in the field and what we're learning every single day as we're working with both youth and adults to prevent substance use here in Central Virginia.
Thank you for joining us on the Recovery Journey podcast with Horizon Behavioral Health. Remember, our greatest triumph is not in never failing, but in rising up every time we fall. If you live in Central Virginia and you or a loved one is ready to reach out for help, call Horizon today at 434-477-5000 to schedule your first appointment. Let us walk this journey with you, and together we can find hope and healing on the horizon.